Welcome back to First on Film. Today we're sitting with filmmaker John Gray, who's a director, writer, producer, creator of the CBS TV series Ghost Whisperer, starring Jennifer Love Hewitt. He's also worked throughout his career with actors like Steven Seagal, Brian Cox, Donald Sutherland, and Stephen Lang. And his new short film, A Guest in My Country, just screened at the Cleveland Film Festival, and it follows an immigrant Uber driver taking an upscale couple across town, and the drama unfolds that reveals truths they would have all preferred had stayed hidden. First of all, John, how are you today?
Spectacular. Thanks for having me. I'm sitting here in my beautiful town of Ashford in County Wicklow. We're having just an incredibly beautiful, sunny, warm day here.
You've had such a long journey in the industry. What would you say is the movie that you've watched the most amount of times?
I've probably watched Citizen Kane,
Okay.
probably more times than I can count, and I find something new in it every time I watch it.
Do you remember what were the first things that drew you to filmmaking and how that's evolved over time, like your motivation to make films and TV?
Well, I was very lucky in that kind of stumbled on it at a very young age. I was like 11 or 12 when I realized I wanted to tell stories. And I thought at first I wanted to be an actor because I thought the actors did it all. Because that's how I experienced everything was through actors. So I used to put on plays in a little loading dock behind my building in Brooklyn where I grew up. And I got frustrated that I couldn't control the audience, such as they were, like my fellow 10-year-olds, but I couldn't control where they looked. Like, if I pulled out a gun on stage or something and I wanted to show his frightened face and the gun, I couldn't do that. But I realized I could do it with a camera. So I borrowed an old 8 millimeter camera from an uncle of mine and I started making movies. And that's when I realized, like, oh, there's a consciousness behind the lens that's actually telling the story. And the actors are important, but they're one of the tools. So luckily for the world, I gave up on the idea of acting and then just got very excited about writing and directing. And like I said, I was very lucky because it kept me out of trouble living in Brooklyn. I was very goal oriented. And, I just fixed my sights on this from a very, very young age.
You've worked across both TV and film. What do you find most creatively different between production on TV versus movies?
Well, it's all changed so radically. Back when I was making TV movies, like in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a bit of a stigma about doing television. The features thought they were better. The TV people were looked down on a little bit. But then things started to change with the advent of cable and of course streaming. And in my opinion, and many people I think opinion, uh, this television and streaming got a lot better than features. Features became just tentpole movies and Marvel universe, and not that that's bad, but you couldn't really, if you want to see an adult kind of intelligent movie, you really couldn't go to a theater to do that. You would have to stream something. People go back and forth very easily between television or streaming and the feature business.
What do you feel are some of the biggest changes within the industry since the pandemic, especially, and in the
Well,
last couple of years in general?
yeah, it's a good question, and I think the biggest thing is that less than ever now, people just studio executives and filmmakers just don't really seem to be able to clue into what people are really looking for, um, especially in television. You see this in the series world and the streaming series world. Um, it's just hard to know what plays now. I think also that the pandemic really sped up the kind of demise of the film business as we knew it. Um, with theatrical releases that were in theaters for a long time, and then you wouldn't play on cable. Well, I guess there's really no more cable, is there? But wouldn't stream for a long time after their theatrical release. And now it seems to me that so many of these movies that are produced by Netflix or Amazon are really kind of like TV movies that are given a couple of weeks in a movie theater, and then their true purpose, is to be streamed, and that's they get to that very quickly. So, I just think the pandemic accelerated this whole idea of people don't really want to leave their homes to see smaller films, more intimate films, grown-up films, as we call them. And I think that more and more we're looking at these giant, tentpole franchise films seem to be the only things that can sustain in theatrical release, which I think is sad. It's kind of sad. Um, it's great that we can see great stuff, in our homes, but I really miss. I think the world, without maybe realizing it, really misses the communal experience of sitting in a theater with a couple hundred people and reacting at the same time, to a movie. It's sort of very sorry to see that go.
Well, I absolutely agree. I feel like the pandemic made people sort of used to just streaming most things. So for a while, it was only movies like Spider-Man or something that like needed to be theatrical. People were going to, but I'm starting to get some hope in the last year or so that there are some movies like. I don't know. Even A24 is definitely leading the
Yeah.
charge with certain movies that have been very successful, like Marty Supreme, or recently the
Hmm.
drama has done quite well. So I think there is a return to that and the importance of the theatrical experience. But I think that like for a very very long time we'll see that by far it's the sequels or the tentpole
Right.
blockbusters are the
Right.
ones that are the most successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right.
So let's talk about this short film of yours, A Guest in My Country. Where did this idea of conversations with cab drivers first stem for you? Because I feel like it's something specific, but also very universal to many of us.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I travel around cities a lot with Uber or Lyft, or here in Ireland, it's free now. And most of our drivers are from somewhere else. And we love to kind of get in conversation with them and find out where they're from, how they came here, what they feel about wherever here is, whether it's New York or here in Dublin or Ireland. And we've always been kind of amazed sometimes at the backstory that these drivers have. They'll just say, well, in my home country, I was a pilot. I was a pharmacist. We've had people say I was a surgeon. And it just made me realize the amount of sacrifice so many people have had to endure to come to a place where they were safe. And I don't think most people think about that when they get into a cab, or they're just thinking about where they're going and their problem. They don't necessarily wonder about this person behind the wheel and what have they been through. And so that's really what started it for us. And I started thinking about a couple, upscale couple who believe they're liberal. I mean, they have all the talking points, and the guy in the movie, you saw that the guy listens to NPR and he wears that like a badge of honor. But when you scratch a little bit more deeply, he still has a lot of the same prejudices and built-in defense systems about people who are different from him. And so that is kind of the setting of the drama and the conflict. And I'm just trying to shine a little bit of a light on this idea that everybody's fighting their own battle, and you just don't know what a person's been through, is going through, will go through when you meet them. And that's what I hope the takeaway might be from the movie, that someone might possibly look at someone they don't pay much attention to normally a little differently.
And I think the short touches on this idea of explicit bias, but more importantly, implicit bias, like the things that come out from the subconscious um, when some don't realize. And the film touches on our tendency to, like you said, judge experiences that we haven't fully heard or understood like they would be our own. Did you feel like Brooke is maybe the character here that made us reflect on ourselves the most, because maybe the others are more on a spectrum of, oh, we would definitely empathize with this behavior, and maybe this behavior we would definitely be repulsed by, but then there's this one character that sort of makes us think of how our own behavior maybe would play into said situation.
Exactly. Steve and Brooke are the passengers, and Steve is a very confident, very self-assured guy, very certain that his opinions are correct. and that he knows exactly what's going on in the world. And Brooke is not quite as sure, and she likes to tweak Steve because of those traits that he has. And we kind of lead the audience to believe there for a while there that Brooke might be fundamentally different from Steve in the way she looks at people like Dembe, the driver. But when push comes to shove, she falls back on the same kinds of easy, comfortable prejudices that so many of us have, whether we realize it or not. And it turned out to be a fatal mistake for her to make without blowing too much of the plot.
And you shot, if I'm not mistaken, on like an LED soundstage in Burbank, right?
Yes, yes. With the budget of a short film, it wasn't realistic for us to shoot nights in the streets of Manhattan, all inside of a cab or a car, with tow rigs, and we just could not do that. I didn't want to ask a cast and crew to be up all night. So, at the same time, we didn't want to do it on green screen either because it's not interactive enough. So we tried our best to find an LED stage that we could afford. It was very difficult. We looked in Toronto, we looked in New York, we looked in Atlanta, um, of course in LA, and we got priced like $25,000 a day. It was really, really hard. But we found a wonderful stage in Los Angeles called Green Power Stages, and they're kind of a new LED stage. And they were looking to get themselves known a little bit, so they gave us an amazingly generous price to shoot there for 2 days, and that's what we did. And we shot the third day on locations in LA to double for Kampala and a couple of suites of Manhattan.
Definitely, like so many more productions have embraced like the volume soundstage to shoot,
Yeah,
and it's like definitely different from green screen because you're actually able to interact with a setting being projected in front of you. By the way, has LA always been a favorite place for you to shoot? How have like your favorite places in the world to shoot changed over time?
well, New York was always my favorite place because that's where I lived and where I grew up. But most of my career happened in LA. We shot our series, Ghost Whisperer, on the Universal lot for all 5 years. But I've been lucky enough to go all over the world. I've made movies in Italy and here in Ireland and um, all through Canada, of course, and all through the U.S. I always joke, it was not really a joke, that, if it wasn't for the movie business, I may not have ever left Brooklyn. But because of it, I have and, got to travel.
I'd love to hear more because I know you just shot one in Ireland. What are like some of the coolest things about working in the industry there?
Well, the locations we shot. This film was a sort of a crime caper film, and it was set in the ruins of an old castle. And we actually found a ninth century castle, the ruins of it, in County Laois, which is not far from Dublin. And it was very, very easy process to apply for the Department of Public Works, the OPW, Office of Public Works here in Ireland. Very easy to work with, at least for us. And they didn't charge us any money to use it. And the acting talent here in Ireland is phenomenal. Um, I don't know why, if it's a training or what it is, but the actors here are just incredible, and the crews are incredible. They're tough. They'll do anything. It's smart and very funny. We have a lot of fun working here. A lot of crack, as they say. Um, so I just had a wonderful experience, and you have to be prepared for the weather and things like that. You have to be aware of what's going on. But we had a great experience here, and look forward to doing more.
I know that you've had a few recent film festivals. Is there anything about like sharing your work with the audience and the accolades and screening around it? Like, is there anything that you still have never gotten used to?
I love everything about movie making, which is why I'm still making short films. And my wife and I produce them together, and I write and direct them. We do one a year at least, and we go to film festivals with them. And I love the festivals because I love meeting young filmmakers. I love seeing their work. I learn from it. And I love doing seminars. At the Sedona Film Festival, I've done seminars on working with actors and writing and directing. And, I love trying to pass on what little bit I may have learned over the years. Um, and it's just a great communal thing. And one of the most wonderful things about it for me is that, most of my career was in television. And, I've been very lucky to have some very successful TV shows, TV movies. And it could be that, like Ghost Whisperer, we had routinely 12 million, 15 million people a week watching it. I've had TV movies where 25 million people watched it, but it's still me in my basement watching it, with my wife and I. So
Yeah.
to go to a film festival and sit in an audience with 250 people or whatever the amount is, see it on a big screen and see people's reactions and feel the movie with an audience. There's nothing like that. And I've missed that. I've only done a few feature films. I really hadn't had a lot of that kind of experience. So that's the thing I love the most about going to festivals and having that theatrical kind of experience.
From your perspective as a film viewer, what are some movies or shows you've seen recently that have had you thinking or just constantly recommending to other people?
Well, like most people, I guess I mostly stream. There aren't that many theatrical releases that I'm excited to go see. Um, I mean, I love action films and that whole kind of Marvel genre, but I'm not that passionate about it. But I tend to respond to character driven material, um, particularly emotionally charged material, and I love thrillers. That's my secret. you know, I just love a really good thriller. Um, so that's what I concentrate on, and I write novels as well, and I just had my first novel published a couple of years ago. It's a horror novel called The Desecrated, and I'm now just finished a thriller novel, which we're going out with, trying to get that sold. And it's a genre that I just love, and capers and the short film we just did in Ireland here is, like I said, it's kind of a caper movie. So it's a lot of twists and turns and things that hopefully the audience doesn't see coming. And I just love that kind of storytelling.
I think absolutely thrillers have also been a soft spot for me throughout my life.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love how often like thrillers, not all of them are the exact same. Like there's comedic thrillers, horror thriller, drama, or more like intimate character driven thriller, like everything in between. It's definitely sci-fi
yeah.
thriller. I have like an incredibly soft spot for. To wrap up, I'd love to know what are the next festivals that your work is going to be screening at and that you will be at as well.
Well, we here in Ireland, there's the Fastnet Film Festival, which is near Cork, and we're going to that. The new one's in that. That's in May, and we're in the Julianne Dubuque Film Festival in Iowa, which is a wonderful festival. That's a great festival. Cleveland, of course, is a fantastic festival. We've been lucky enough to play it several times. I've never been able to go. I couldn't go this time either. And I just came from the Vero Beach Film Festival in Florida, where they showed our feature film. I did an indie feature a few years ago called White Irish Drinkers, with Stephen Lang and Karen Allen and Peter Rieger. And it's a very dark coming of age story, but it's also a bit of a crime movie. And it was a great opportunity to go and see that on a big screen again. And it's a movie that audiences always really respond to very viscerally. So it was great to go and see that in a big movie theater with an audience and do a great Q&A afterwards. And it was a lot of fun. And we have a lot more Irish festivals coming up and a lot more US festivals and European festivals that we're just waiting to hear on.
How often do you like going back and watching one of your older works like that?
It's not that often. If something's being shown at a film festival, I love to go see it so I can watch with an audience. There's not much for me in just watching it by myself. Sometimes I get nice memories, fun things that I remember from the movie. But I really love watching a film unfold in front of an audience who's never seen it before. It's always great. See what works, what doesn't work. And you always learn something from that experience, always.
For sure. Well, John, it's been such a great time speaking with you, and I wish you best of luck with the
Thank you.
next few projects and screenings. And thanks again for your time.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.